What's up, and welcome to another episode of Movie Pitch Monday. My name is Edward Mullen. I'm an author, most notably The Art of the Hustle and Prodigy, but I've written a number of other good books. There's my cat screwing up my intro, and what else? I lost my train of thought. So this is a show about pitching hypothetical movie ideas. And in the past, I've done some like Back to the Future 4 and, Ready Player 2, some other ones, I can't remember. But anyway, the difference between those and this is has less to do with my kind of personal brand of creativity, if you will. It's more to do with, I'm pitching a story about the movie Sly, a Sylvester Stallone biopic. And the reason it's a little bit different is because these aren't necessarily my ideas. They're based on real life events, and most of them I got from other YouTube videos. There's two that I really like. There's a Tony Robbins where he talks about Sylvester Stallone when he made Rocky. So that's the kind of, it was such an inspirational story, which kind of inspired this pitch. So I highly encourage you to check it out. He'll do a fantastic job of telling you that kind of part of his life. And Sylvester Stallone also has a series of videos. It's I think 4 or 8-parter. I'll link to them in the descriptions, but I help myself gratuitously to both to kind of tell this pitch. And there are a little bit differing versions of the stories, and when in doubt or when there is a conflict of facts or details, I just went with Sylvester Stallone's version, even though Tony Robbins' version is very much, it's maybe much more kind of theatrical and dramatic. So my movie is going to take place around, the time when he created Rocky. He's this young, kind of broke, struggling actor, he wasn't really a screenwriter per se, but he was just kind of down and out, and he was 24, 25, living in New York City. And I think one of the cool things about this pitch, let's say hypothetically gets made, Rocky kind of story has been, brought back to life with Creed and Creed 2. But, people love the Rocky movies. So this is like an underdog story about an underdog story, if you know what I mean. So it's like, well, I'll get into it. So without further ado, this is my movie pitch for Sly. So the movie is a period piece, right? It takes place in the 70s, real life story. And, I'm helping myself to a lot of the kind of real life facts. I did a little bit of research on, checking out the videos that I mentioned and, going through some Wikipedia and stuff like that. But so it opens 1970, picture like gritty New York City. It's got that kind of, old timey film footage look to it. So, I'm talking old cars and old, the clothing and old buildings, and it just got that that kind of old 70s vibe to it. And, the opening scene, we see Sylvester Stallone, or an actor who plays him, and I just happened to come across this guy, Noah Centineo. I don't know who he is. He just came up on my feed one day, this, young Italian kid. I'm like, okay, well, let's make him the Sylvester Stallone. So this guy, we see him exit his apartment, New York City. I don't know where he lives. Let's call it Brooklyn. Brick building. It's cold. It's like 5, 6 in the morning. The sun is just coming up. You can see his breath because it's like, that, September, October, November kind of weather. And, he flips up his collar. He's got maybe like a hat on, stuffs his hands into his pockets, and he's walking to the train station, right? And so he gets onto the train, and he's kind of like looking around and, being observant. And in one, scene, he offers his seat to like a lady or something like that. And, really what I want to establish in this opening shot is 4 things. One, that, despite the way he looks kind of very rough and tough. He's actually a very sweet guy, which will, later become very important to kind of shaping who he is. It's also, I want to establish that it's early morning, right? It's 5, 6 in the morning. So this guy's hustling. This guy's a hard worker, right? He's looking around the train, and, he's very observant about the world. He's very curious. The last thing is that he's from a lower income neighborhood. So that, I think those 4 themes kind of are central to defining who this character is. All right, so he takes the train into Manhattan, and, he's going on, open casting calls, and trying to get an agent, and he's hustling, right? He's an up-and-coming or aspiring actor. He's not working at this time, and he's receiving, on the Tony Robbins video, they said he received 1,500 no's, which, you know, he was getting rejected by multiple agents, you know, so he'd go and get rejected and go again, and they'd reject him, and he'd, you know, wait there all day. He's just very, very persistent guy, right? And a lot of them judged him based on the way he looked or the way he talked, which was, you know, unusual to say the least. And they all said, no, 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 slam the door in his face. And, you know, one guy jokes, like, you know, the only job I could get you is, like, as a delivery driver unloading boxes from my uncle's truck, and, you know, really rude stuff to him, right? And, you know, he's out all day, and he comes home at night, and he's married. He's got a wife and a dog named Buttkiss, which will come up later. And you know, the wife isn't that supportive, right? She's kind of on his case, like, hey man, we're struggling here. We got a mountain of bills, and you're trying to be an actor. Like, get a job, right? You're being a loser. I didn't marry a loser. Let's, you know, start being a man, provide for our family. And, you know, this is ridiculous. Like, it's time to, like, put those dreams away, right? So he's not really getting that encouragement, right? So, but nevertheless, his spirits are not broken, right? So he comes home, he's smiling, even though he's exhausted, he kind of keeps a positive frame of mind, right? And he's like, you know, why is it so cold in here? And then she's like, well, they cut off the heat, right? And like, she's showing him like a mountain of bills. And he's like, oh, that's okay. You know, we can keep each other warm tonight. So I'm really trying to establish, like, this is a lovable guy, right? Even in the face of adversity, he's kind of, you know, smiling and making the most of it, right? But this lady is not having it. I also want to establish the relationship with his parents. His parents got divorced at, I think he was at, when he's 9. I read that from Wikipedia. I don't know if that's true or not, but so I'd like to establish this in there somewhere. And I have no idea, by the way, if his parents even live in the same city as him, but let's suppose for this movie they do. So he goes to visit his mom, and his mom is like the pillar of encouragement. She's saying, you know, like, how much she believes in him, and reminds him of a story. So I got this from Wikipedia as well. So you know how he talks kind of with a droopy lip? So that apparently comes from, you know, the doctors when he was being delivered. They used 2 sets of forceps and were like being overly forceful with him, and like severed a nerve, so it kind of left his face with like a slight paralysis, and that's kind of why he has that signature look and you know, tonation, or the way he speaks, right? So I would have her kind of tell that story, like, you know what, you've always been tough, you've always been a fighter. So I also want to establish a relationship with his father, bring him into the movie somehow. From my research on Wikipedia, it says he's a hairdresser or something like that, but you know, maybe for this movie I'd make him in like a low-level like grocery store clerk or whatever. I don't know why, I just kind of picture that. Maybe he like runs a bodega or something, and so, you know, Sly comes in, he's like, hey Pops, how's it going? How's everything? And they kind of chat. His dad maybe is a little bit less supportive, a little bit more old school immigrant mentality. He doesn't really believe in the arts. He's like, hey, you should like work hard, right? There's honor in that. So Sylvester Stallone goes to his wife, back to the apartment. Oh, I got bit. Cat bit me. Goes to his apartment. Wife is like, you know, nagging him. They're struggling. They're poor. And every day he goes out on his grind, right? And he goes to the New York Public Library, and he happens to sit down, you know, not to read because it's cold outside, and he's just trying to get warm. So the seat that he sits in happens to have a book by Edgar Allan Poe, which he picks it up and he reads it, and it really kind of inspires him in a number of ways, kind of makes him consider being a writer. Now, at the time, he had dabbled in writing. I don't think there were like really computers, personal computers back then, so he's writing scripts or screenplays on like legal pads, like those yellow legal pads, and he wrote Paradise Alley and some other films. So what he does is he, you know, him and the wife are having like vicious fights. He's desperate. He's got like 50 bucks to his name, and he is hungry, so he steals his wife's jewelry and he sells it, and just so they can kind of afford to eat. And so his wife eventually finds out, becomes super upset, leaves him. She stays with like a sister or something like that, or a friend, leaving Sly in his little apartment alone, hungry, no heat, and with his dog. So, you know, we see a scene, maybe he's like going to sleep with his jacket and his like hat on or a scarf. He's like cuddling his dog, and he's maybe say something like, it's me and you, buddy, you know, whatever, I don't know, some kind of establishing relationship with the dog. Now, this dog, mind you, is his best friend. If you don't have animals, or if you do have animals, you'll know, like, this is like the love of his life. He loves his dog, right? I think it's like a bulldog or something like that. So he comes to like the lowest point in his life, and he decides he has to like sell the dog. It's basically like a sink or swim environment. If he doesn't sell this dog, he's gonna go rob people. Like, that's kind of how desperate this guy is. Doesn't want to do it, has to do it. So he goes to a liquor store and you know, tries to sell his dog to a stranger, and eventually he sells his dog for $50, and just kind of broke his heart, completely crushes him, and he just, you know, we see this really kind of somber moment in the movie where he's just crying. He goes back to his house, his apartment. He can't believe he just did that. He sold his best friend for $50, and he's feeling pretty kind of disgusting about it. Then, you know, next thing you know, he becomes evicted. You know, he's struggling. He's getting like odd acting gigs that maybe kind of feed him for like a couple weeks or whatever. And, you know, some of them are like playing a thug in a movie, like no roles, no dialogue, just like 20 seconds in a movie, and he gets like beat up or something like that. So eventually he gets evicted from his apartment, and he's now sleeping at the bus terminal, and he's there for 3 weeks. So he's homeless. And so one night he watches, I believe it's like May something, 1975. You can look it up. It's Muhammad Ali versus Chuck Wepner, this white guy. And Muhammad Ali, as the story goes, is beating the brakes off Chuck Wepner. But this guy, as much as he kind of got knocked down, he kept getting up and he kept coming forward. And in one of the later rounds, he actually drops Ali with a body shot. Now, Stallone is watching this, and he's like completely inspired, not only because this is kind of paralleling his life or giving him some inspiration, like no matter how much, you know, life throws at you, you got to keep coming back and keep fighting. And actually, this guy like knocks down the champion. So that night, Stallone writes a draft. Well, he begins to write a draft for Rocky, and it takes him 3 days writing on a legal pad, and he eventually comes up with this script, which admittedly he says it's not that good, but anyway, it's a finished product. So in one of his auditions, the auditions doesn't go well. People don't even give him the time of day. And on the way out, he happens to mention to one of the producers of the film, like, hey, you know what? I do a little bit of writing. And he's like, oh yeah? So he tells him about this story, this kind of underdog hero story with Rocky, and he's, you know, gets to fight the heavyweight champ or whatever. I haven't seen Rocky in a while, but I think it's something like that. And the guy goes, that sounds interesting. You know, maybe you should bring it by sometime. So Sylvester Stallone brings it by sometime. And the guy goes, yeah, like, this is fantastic. Let me sit with this for a bit and discuss with my partners, and we'll be in touch. So they get back to him. I don't know how. I don't think he had a phone at that time. But anyway, they get back to him somehow. And they're like, yeah, we like the script. We'll give you $25,000, which is a lot of money in the 70s. And Sylvester Stallone should be like beside himself with joy. But he goes, there's just that one thing. And the guy goes, oh yeah, what's that? He's like, I gotta be Rocky. The guy goes, no chance. You can't be Rocky. Nobody knows who you are. You're nobody. You've never been in anything. And we can't have you the lead in the movie. The guy's like, and Stallone's like, okay, fine, then I'll leave. So these guys are like, this guy's out of his mind, right? So they call him back, and they're like, hey man, we'll give you like $100,000. $100,000. He's like, can I be Rocky? They're like, no man, you can't be Rocky. For the same reasons I just said. He's like, all right, then I walk. So the offers kept coming in. It's like $125,000, $250,000, like $300,000. Eventually gets up to $360,000. The same question, like, can I be Rocky? And they're like, no, you can't be Rocky. He's like, well, I am Rocky. So if you don't believe that I'm Rocky, then you don't deserve my script. And he walks. Think about it. Think about the tenacity on this guy. Tenacity is the wrong word, but like, think about the balls on this guy to walk away from $360,000 when he has $50 to his name because he believed in this project so much. And he says in one of the interviews that I watched, he's like, I knew that like if this movie took off and I wasn't Rocky, he's like, I'd probably jump off a building or step in front of a bus. He'd be really, really upset. So he's like, I have to play Rocky. This is my golden goose. And I'm just going to stick to my guns. I'm going to roll the dice. And he said in the interview that he became very comfortable with poverty. He's like, look, I didn't need much. I was, you know, I had it down to a science. I knew where to eat and sleep and all that kind of stuff. So he's like, you know what? Worst case scenario, I knew I'd be all right. So he rejected the money, rolled the dice, took a chance on himself. They eventually called him back, made a deal. They're like, look, man, we'll give you, and they made a deal for $35,000, and he gets to be Rocky. And if he like does anything wrong, if he shows up late, if he sneezes, if he looks at somebody the wrong way, he doesn't remember his lines, he's fired. And so they kind of reasoned like, look, this is going to help us like mitigate the costs or alleviate some of the financial burden. Like, we're not gonna, if this movie flops and we lose a ton of money, at least we didn't lose it paying this guy like a lead actor. And they had some lead actors in mind, but they went with this unknown name, right? Okay, so he has $35,000. He's starring in a movie which is set to film in like a month or whatever. And the first thing he does, you'd think he'd celebrate or, you know, go party, go buy something. The very first thing he does is he goes back to the liquor store and he waits every single day for 3 days on the off chance that the guy shows up with his dog. And on the third day, lo and behold, the guy shows up with his dog and he goes, you know, excuse me, sir, you know, maybe you remember me. I sold you my dog about a month and a half ago. He goes, oh yeah, I remember you. Like, I love the dog. He's like, cool. Yeah, look, I need my dog back. I'll give you $100. Guy's like, what? No way. He's like, come on, man. Like, you paid 50. Like, I'll give you twice that amount. He's like, no chance. So Stallone increased his offer. He's like, I'll give you $500. He's like, no way. I'm not selling you the dog. He's like, 1,000. Come on, man. $1,000. Guy's like, there's no amount of money like that will allow me to sell this dog to you. I love the dog. He's like, yeah, but all right. So they eventually made a deal. $3,000 and the guy gets a part in the movie. And which is, I don't know if that's actually true, but that's according to the story. So so we get this like really like happy moment in the movie, the end of Act 2. Stallone, you know, things are kind of going well for him. He's got a little bit of cash. He's got a lead role in the movie that he wrote. He's got his dog back. He's crying. The dog's freaking out, running and licking him and jumping around. He starts to get like, you know, back on his feet. Maybe takes his wife out for dinner. Gets an apartment. So it's like this really kind of like heroic, I wouldn't say rags to riches story. He's not rich yet, but like he's kind of on the way. So the third act, this is really what I think is really kind of the strong selling feature of the movie, because the third act is all like the making of Rocky. So imagine, if you will, all the behind the scenes footage of, like, you know, we've seen this before in other movies, like, trying to think, like 8 Mile or something like that, maybe a good example. Or I think there's actually an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie coming out, which is a complete coincidence. I didn't know that before I did this pitch, but I think it would be really cool. Oh, another one, like the James Franco one where they did about like the behind the scenes making of that like really terrible movie, like The Room or whatever. So it's really cool to see like the behind the scenes making of Rocky, the stress that he put on his body, the, you know, the long hours, the, you know, running up the steps. Like, we're seeing a lot of the famous scenes and like what it took to actually make those. So I think that'd be really cool. We also see like a casting call. So they're starting to like put the movie together and get locations and cast or whatever. And there's this one story that I came across from the Stallone video series, which I'll link to, where he talks about casting, I think his name's Carl Weathers. Forgive me, I think that's right, but he's the guy who played Apollo Creed. So he told the story in this video of Apollo Creed coming in and auditioning with Sylvester Stallone and kind of like shadow boxing, and like he's like banging him up pretty good, like punched him in the head a couple times, and Stallone's like, what the hell, right? Like, this guy's acting like he doesn't want to be in this movie. Like, why is he hitting me? And so Apollo Creed, we'll call him Apollo Creed, right? He goes, yeah, sorry, I would have done a better job, like, had I had a real actor to work with. Like, I don't think he realized that Stallone was like, maybe he thought that he was just like a producer or something like that, but he's like, they're actually, no, that's Sylvester Stallone, he's going to be Rocky, right? And so without missing a beat, the guy goes, well, maybe he'll get better by the time we film. So he's like this really like insulting like demeanor, right? And Stallone, to his credit, I'm not sure I would be this way, but he kind of swallowed his ego, and he just like, yo, hire this man, because that's the exact attitude we need in an antagonist in Apollo Creed, right? So I thought that was really great. Put that scene in the movie. So we see some of these iconic scenes from the movie and some of the behind the scenes and all that kind of stuff. We see some stuff with his parents. He's, you know, talking about the movies, stuff about the wife, the dog. We're just basically seeing his life and what it would be. I don't know what that'd be. I'm assuming if this ever was to become a movie, not saying that it would, but if it does, Stallone would definitely be involved, and he'd be able to kind of fill in the pieces, you know, better than I can, right? So on the first day of shooting, he's in his dressing room. He's really nervous. This is it. This is the moment he's kind of been waiting for, and he's nervous. And one of the producers, you know, knocks on his dressing room door. He goes, hey, Stallone, are you ready? And he goes, no, but Rocky is. And so he kind of like, so the cool thing, which I found out doing, like watching some of these videos, is that he is Rocky. Like that character of a guy who, you know, looks, you know, from the movie, I remember him like, I think he was like a loan shark or something like that. He had this like leather jacket, this hat, and he would basically like lend money out, and if you don't pay him back, he'd break your knees. And this is why Mickey, the boxing trainer, wouldn't train him, because he's like, you know, I don't respect you, kind of the line of work that you've chosen for yourself. But that's not really fair, because people judge him based on the way he looks and the way he talks, right? And even like, you know, Adrian, the woman, you know, there's some really sweet moments in Rocky, which is you know, ultimately a love story, right? And you wouldn't necessarily suspect that from the guy who looks like Stallone. So that's what Rocky is, but that's actually what Stallone is. His life mirrors that, right? So Rocky is kind of his alter ego. So when the moment comes where the cameras are on and he needs to shine, he steps into this role. He becomes this like, almost like a superhero, if you will, right? So I thought that was kind of cool. Okay, so now the movie wraps. This is like the last, you know, 10, 20 minutes of the movie. Rocky is finished rapping. They edit it. They do whatever they do in movies. And they have a screening for the movie for the first time. Nobody's seen it, for 900 people that are all part of like the Directors Guild and like industry insiders. So Stallone's there. He invites his mom. Maybe his dad's there too. I don't know. And his wife. And they're all sitting there, and you know, the theater goes black, and the movie starts playing, and it does not go well, according to the story that I heard. So apparently, like, the jokes didn't land. The fights were very like he used the word listless, which is like you know, lacking energy or lacking kind of enthusiasm, and it just kind of fell flat. And he was devastated. He was a little like embarrassed as well, but he was like, this is embarrassing, right? Like this is not good. And so he has his like head hanging low. He's deflated, and he waits till everybody clears out, and he starts like, you know, I don't know, apologizing, like, hey, sorry, like I tried my best, all that kind of stuff. And the mom and the daughter, or the wife, are like, hey, don't worry about it. So everyone files out of the movie theater, and it's on the top floor. Stallone and his kind of crew leave, and they walk down the first flight of stairs and the second flight of stairs. And as they're rounding the first flight of stairs, they see all 900 people like waiting below, waiting for him. And they all look at him. This is like Rocky standing on the top of the staircase, and they all start clapping. Like really this like heartfelt moment in the movie. And he just comes apart. He starts crying, and they're really celebrating him. They're like, the movie was incredible. And he leans to his mom. This is true. This is not my words. He goes, you know, how could you doubt me, right? And it was just kind of a funny moment. And so, you know, the movie is very well received, and I think I'd end it there. I think it's like ending on a high note. Boom, credits. And then, you know how sometimes in movies they have like a black screen and then like the text comes up? So I would have text that comes up that says, this movie was shot in 1 month for like $1 million. It went on to make over $225 million in the box office. Then the next line, it was awarded or nominated for 10 Academy Awards, including Best Screenplay, Best Actor, Best Picture, blah, blah, blah. And then it won, I think it won a bunch of those categories: Best Picture, Best Original Screenplay, Best blah, blah, blah. So it's really crazy that it did all that. And then maybe I would show the actual, like, put in, like, as the credits are scrolling, have like a picture-in-picture of like the actual acceptance speech or something like that. So it's like this really kind of heartfelt moment. Then, if you really want to get crazy, and let's get crazy, I would do a post-credit scene. I know it's not really the kind of movie that does post-credit scenes, but let's do it anyway. Post-credit scene, you got Stallone. He's in nice, you know, he's on the come up. He's on in a nice like shirt and a new leather jacket. He's in his agent's office puffing a cigar. And they got a mountain of scripts, and they're like, man, the offers keep coming in, and I got this one, I got this one, I got this one, but like, you know, what do you want to do, Sly? And he's like, I want to be an action star. And he's like, all right. So he's like rifling through a bunch of scripts, and he's like, I got the perfect one for you. And he slides it across the desk. The guy picks it up, and he's like, and the agent's still talking. He's like, it's from a book from a guy named David Morrell from the 70s. He probably wouldn't mention the 70s, but it's called First Blood. So Stallone picks it up, sees the script, flipping through it, reading through it, and he's like, Rambo. And he like, and then maybe, I don't know, maybe I'd put in a line. I'd put in a line somewhere like, you know, they're thinking about this like this other guy, this Australian or Austrian bodybuilder guy with a last name that nobody can pronounce, but you know, I think you'd be perfect for this role. Kind of a nod to like the rivalry they had with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So maybe I'd stuff that in there somewhere. I don't know. But then credits, movie ends, and yeah. So I think Stallone has a very, very interesting life. I would focus on like this kind of window where he was nothing, and then he became who he, like, you know, he'd made Rocky. I think that would be an awesome movie. We get to see Rocky from another perspective in the making of it, and this really heartfelt moment with the dog and the things paying off. So I don't know, there it is. That's my story, that's my pitch. A movie called Sly. And yeah, if you like it, please hit the like button. If you want to hear more pitches, please hit the subscribe button, and I will see you next time.